First off, we have #1 Marmaduke fan. Now, I've been really impressed with his YouTube channel. I really recommend you guys check out both these guys' channels, and I'll have links for them. So, #1 Marmaduke fan, really cool YouTuber and an artist. And then the guy there choke holding the walrus is Larry King. He's an awesome dude. I've been talking to him for a couple weeks on Twitter, and I wanted to get their thoughts on a current situation going on Twitter. So a really famous, well-known writer, comics writer named Jerry Conway, and we'll definitely talk about his work, but we're also going to talk a little bit about his recent Twitter interactions with fans. So because this topic was inspired by a video by #1 Marmaduke fan, I'm going to turn it over to him and let him talk a little bit about his interactions and thoughts on Jerry Conway.
Thank you, DC, and thanks for having me on. Well, boy, with how Twitter's going, it already seems like we've had six more crazy Twitter arguments since then. So, yeah. So, Jerry Conway, I interacted with him well, actually, you interacted with him first. That's when I first noticed it. You kind of politely asked him to, you know, maybe cool off on the politics since he's a comics professional, and he got really snippy with you. And,
that is kind of. Sorry, that is kind of what started it, and then Yellow Flash made a video about it. But sorry, go ahead.
Right. So I haven't seen Yellow Flash's video yet, but I did see Captain Coming. So I'm guessing that as a result of YouTubers with higher subscriber counts making videos on the matter, Jerry then went back to Twitter and tweeted sort of these oblique questions about alt-right trolls. And the second I saw that, I thought, oh no, I know what this is. This is a leading question. It's designed to kind of trick you into accidentally saying you're alt-right. But I wanted to believe that there was a genuine spirit behind the question. Like he honestly didn't know what people were talking about, or he was upset that anyone would object to the term social justice warrior. So I thought, well, there's at least a remote chance that he's asking this question honestly. And so then I thought, well, what's the best thing I could recommend to him? And my first thought was Thomas Sowell's book, The Vision of the Anointed. And the reason I thought of that wasn't because I just wanted to name drop Thomas Sowell and say, oh, see, I'm so woke and cool. I've got a black conservative on my side. I name dropped that book because it was directly relevant to the topic of people who get obsessive over things, or who think they have a vision for a perfect world, and that vision takes over their whole life, right? So it seemed like the perfect...
sorry, but just along with what you were saying, when you brought up that book to Jerry Conway, you didn't say anything about the man's race or really his politics. You just mentioned the book, right?
Exactly, because that was irrelevant. The reason the book was relevant was it's directly about the topic that Jerry Conway was talking about people who have an attitude which leads them to go after anyone and feel like anything is morally justified. The ends justifies the means. And then of course, you saw it, that Jerry Conway immediately made this about Thomas Sowell's race and insinuated that people like me only mention Thomas Sowell. We only trot out Thomas Sowell because we're racists trying to persuade people that we're not racist. And I was a little shocked at first because in my thinking, if you mention someone's name, you know, if you mention, here's the name of a book, then the normal way a conversation would go is you could talk about the content of the book. And maybe you could say, oh, well, you know, I don't like so-and-so. I think he's wrong about this stuff. But Conway immediately took it to those who read Thomas Sowell are racists who are trying to disprove their racism. So at that point, you know, there's no way the conversation can go but down, and it definitely went down from that point.
Well, it's really strange too, because you're talking to a professional writer, and you're just, you know, recommending a book. There's a pretty good chance he's already read it, you know, and the conversation could go from there, or he would read it and get back to you. But that's not how it went at all.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah, and that's really the saddest thing about it. He's got a really great body of work that I know we've all read, at least some of. But unless you had more to say on that, I was going to let Larry speak his piece about the same topic.
Yeah, I don't want to restate all my points from my video because I figure people can go watch that. I feel like that's a pretty good summary of my drama, my personal drama with Gary Conway. So, Larry King, I want to hear you talk. Come on, bud.
All right, man. I usually hijack streams with my bombastic personality. Apparently, I got invited for all time from a couple people's houses for being way too over the top. I'm like, either I'm all quiet or I'm too much. It's like there's no middle ground with me. I can't have small talk. It's either I got to be the center of attention or I've got to be blending into the wall like camouflage. But
okay.
But this whole Jerry Conway situation, I didn't come across it till I just heard people popping off about it, and in doing so, I would, kind of did some investigation. I had some quote unquote sources, like, somebody had brought it all together, screen capped, archived, and everything like that. And I was laughing my ass off. I know people were upset. I was laughing my ass off, calling people bot. Like, if the guy's trolling, he's the best damn troll I've ever seen. And the back of my head, it came to me, it's like, this is the guy that got the death threats for killing Gwen Stacy. I mean, this guy, he's had bad fan interaction for, 40 years now? So this kind of thing, like, somebody, even in a very political, very soft way of saying, like, hey, you have a horrible opinion. I'm trying not to cuss here. If you have a horrible opinion, you need to change that opinion because you're losing customers. Yeah, I don't care. Go away. And I laugh. To me, that's funny. It's like, I let the free market sort it out. So when he's calling people, basically, it's like, the idea is like, if you're a comic reader, more likely you're for social justice. And he is right. He's not calling, like, that makes you a social justice warrior. No. It's like, do you want somebody that happens to be gay to be bashed in the head with a brick because they happen to be something? No, nobody wants. Very few want that. Right. I've known a few that like that, but what he's saying isn't 100% wrong. And it's one of these things. There's a lot of black and white. I like to deal in black and white. Certain things are black and white. Child molesters. That's all. Like, that's black and white. There's no middle ground. Right. It's like, well, you have to feel sympathy for them. But when it comes to this kind of thing, we're dealing with a creative person created, wrote some of the, incredible stories. The death of Gwen Stacy and everything. I mean, I think was 3 Spider-Man movies basically had reference to it. Video games, the movie, the video games, movies, the TV show, other comics.
He wrote a lot.
He wrote a lot. Co-created Firestorm.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff. And this guy, very prolific as far as creators go. There's a few out there that are like that, from that kind of that, I guess you could say, second generation creators. Because you had like Ditko. I mean, you had Ditko, Kirby, Stanley, the rest of them. They did some stuff in the Golden Age. They, a lot of them did stuff in the Golden Age as well, the Atomic Age and Silver Age. He was like the Silver, Conway is like kind of that more like that Bronze Age guy. Yeah, kind of middle ground between. And so,
especially in DC, he wrote a lot in the 70s. And 80s.
Yeah, I was looking through the. I think he did a screen cap of all the stuff he had done.
And that was just part of it.
And I was like, good God Almighty! And it's like, because it's like issue this through 15 or something. So it's like, I mean, most writers, even let alone artists, can actually stick to a schedule nowadays. Yeah. And when they do, it's like they beat a dead horse, like with Bendis when Bendis was on Iron Man. It's like, oh God, just go ahead and get somebody else. And then, oh yeah, we will. Dan Slott, no! So people freak out about that. But I look at it this way. There's a lot of people, and I'm not saying you're wrong to tell, like, hey, maybe you need to chill out, because I think he knows it, he just doesn't care. And that's why I don't only follow people that I didn't follow people I agree with, but
I didn't even tell him what to do. I was just, oh yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm trying to be in general terms. There are people like, you're going to lose business, bud, if you act like this. It's like, fine, go away. Don't want you. And I find it funny, just the brashness of it, because there's a lot of people, very wormy people, very creative types. They want acceptance. They want love. They want to be showered with praise. He's got his at this point. He's not making any more comics, really. This guy, his best days are behind him, in life and in creativity.
His best days are probably behind him, but I was just looking on Wikipedia, and he was writing for Marvel as recently as 2017 and DC as recently as 2016. So, he wouldn't have to be finished. It's really strange, I think that's probably the one thing we can all agree on here, is it's really bizarre the way he's acting, especially at this point in his life.
Yeah.
So King, sorry, you're kind of seeing in Conway that he's having fun. Like you see Conway is kind of smiling and knowing a bit about what he's doing as he's doing it. Right?
Is that the explanation?
I think it's a little bit of both. I honestly think he is fed up because there's a lot of people, as we've seen this weekend. This weekend's a perfect example. Proves kind of the point. People like going from, oh my God, Antarctica Press is the best thing ever, to burn it to the ground. And am I wrong? I mean,
no.
Right.
It was in less than 24 hours. It was like in a 12-hour period. It went from, let's support Antarctic Press. It sucks that they aren't going to carry Jawbreakers, but we still got to back them, to they're literally the devil, you know, like
the worst of Marvel. Yeah, like I've read some stuff like that. It's like, you people are ridiculous. It's the hyperbole Olympics. It's just going on, and everybody's juicing, you know.
Yeah. King, you've gotten at something really interesting, and I think it might be something important for people who just care about comics generally to talk about. So let me throw this out there and get your thoughts. So okay. I talk about social justice a lot on my channel because it's something of real concern to me. But people who are not social justice warriors can make the same dumb mistakes social justice warriors can do. So, you know, I see social justice warriors as people who are really, you know, ready to go online and scream people down and say, you know, conform to my politics, or I won't buy your comics. But it's possible for people on the, you know, left, right, and center to do the same thing. So when you're talking about how you kind of are laughing at Jerry Conway, and you kind of, it sounds to me like you're kind of appreciating the willingness to push back, you know, the willingness to not just be, you know, Mr. Nice Guy all the time on social media. And you see a value in that kind of, I guess, attitude or just way of conducting yourself, right?
Mm.
All right.
Yeah. Well, the idea is, I think I know where you're getting at, but I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
All right. So did you have an opportunity to see what I said to Gary Conway?
I did not. I tried to find that one. I could not find it. I remember you saying something about it, but
I'll hit you up with that later. But one of the things I wanted to say to Conway is, I'm not going to boycott your books because of this. But one thing I said is, if the man came into my house and, you know, got in my face and said the same things to me, he still couldn't undo how meaningful some of his stories were to me. I'm not the biggest Conway fan. I was a Spider-Man fan growing up, so I became familiar with him through that. So I think what you're getting at is that I'm connecting with. You know, it's kind of ironic because you're kind of taking Conway's side, but I'm actually agreeing with you because I don't think it's good to have an attitude of saying, you know, Gary Conway, say exactly what I think you need to say, or I will not support your book. You know, there's a whininess to that. So one of the big things that I wanted to talk to Conway about, because you're right, maybe there's a sense in which Conway is just having fun and having a laugh. Like, what's it going to matter at this point? You know, he could literally flip off everyone, and is that going to make a big difference to him at the end of his life? Probably not. But the thing I think about a lot, and it's because I was an art student and got exposed to this a lot, was I see the social justice mentality of today as being a different sort of animal from the kind of old school liberal / progressive hippie of Conway's day. So one thing I'm worried about is sort of that kind of like that old school lefty vibe, you know, that we could say Conway maybe represents. I don't think that the millennial age social justice warriors are going to let them get away with that for long. So and I just see that in just all their interactions with people. You know, everything's got to be politically correct. Everything has to be said just so. Every pronoun must be correct. And so one thing I tried to tell Mr. Conway is, you know, you can say that you are a social justice warrior, but that doesn't mean that social justice warriors are going to give you a pass on, you know, problematic elements in your work. And I pointed back to Gail Simone's Women in Refrigerators.
That's right.
Yeah, and she names him as an example of the sexist trope. He's probably the most famous example in the history of comics of the sexist trope of killing a female character.
She called him out specifically by name in that article, right?
Yep, yeah. He is named on the site. And I had art professors who did not care one whit about comic books, but when they heard I was interested in drawing comic books, what they would take that to mean is, oh, well, we should teach you how to make progressive comic books, because they see politics as the thing that makes art have meaning. If your art isn't political, it's not really art. So I was actually introduced to the Women in Refrigerators blogs by feminist art professors. And then I would just look, would look through that list and I would recognize names from my childhood, and I couldn't believe it. So Gail Simone has had a ripple effect beyond people, DC Fans United. You know, when I look at your channel and I look at your interactions with guys like Conway, you are a comics lover. You dig comics. You talk about comics. Your channel is doing that. Now, I am a comics fan. I was as a child, but I was one of those who, you know, took a break in college, and then I was exposed to this weird SJW art world. And for them, all of you guys suck, and it doesn't matter if you're left, right, or center, because they see the personal is political. They see everything you read and everything you love and everything you enjoy as problematic and needing to cater to their whims. So that was what I was worried that, you know, someone like Conway might miss, because you say, oh, there are all these nutty kids on the college campuses, and if you're not there, you know, well, okay, so there are a few nutty kids on the college campuses, but it's not the kids, it's the teachers. So I am clicking with, you know, what Larry King is saying about Jerry Conway, you know, pushing back a little bit, not just willing to be, you know, Mr. Nice Guy all the time. I think there's a value to having a little pushback, but I'm just worried that people like Conway, to these weirdos on the college campuses, you know, Conway's a sexist. That's how they would look at his work, and that's how they're going to teach his work forever. So that's why I was kind of disheartened by my whole interaction with them.
Well, and that's what's so ironic about it. You have the co-creator of The Punisher going after people for posting guns. You know, he's done all kinds of writing that would be considered anti-feminist, and yet he wants to not just be in the bandwagon with these folks that would attack him, but pull the wagon, you know, be out there in the front of the parade. And it's just really bizarre.
The problem with Jerry right now is I'm not saying he's 100% right. I do like to see that pushback, like you're saying. You know, Marmaduke, I like that pushback from somebody who kind of, you know, near the end of his life, and also he's opinionated, very opinionated, and people coming after him, and he's just calling them bots. So they're using these are advanced bots using, you know, pulling words out of the internet, you know, out of the ether. And I'm like, this is great, like, and like how much that would irk somebody, because I've seen, like, you know, you were mentioning people seeing, you know, like even though he would on campuses, he'd be viewed as, you know, this chauvinist, sexist, you know, oh, he kills women, you know, he killed Gwen Stacy, you know, it was Peter's fault, it was Jerry Conway, he killed Gwen Stacy. Even that, like, but that was that meme. The left eats their own. Same thing with the right. The right eats. Everybody eats their own. You know, it's like,
yeah, white
people. That you know, there you go. But
I'm really trying to weave just kind of a moderate position through all of this, and it's really hard. I don't know. It's weird because, yeah, like Marmaduke was saying, I'm just focused on comic books, and I get on Twitter and it's all like culture war 24/7. We all have a way to broadcast ourselves, and a lot of people take advantage of that just to be dramatic.
I think some people don't need a voice. Like, I've gotten to that point. It's like, you know what? You should have your voice taken away, at least suspended for a while, because it's like some people, like, that's all they do is screech. You know, that's or reeing as people do. But
yeah,
but I've seen, like, lately, I've just seen people get worse and worse as far as, you know, they'll find, like, you know, complaining about Next Wave agents that, hey, oh, that's the first Marvel SJW book and stuff like that. You know, I'm surprised they haven't gone after God Loves Man Kills, or, you know, other books. You know, like, that's you know, see, they're putting that stuff in the comics even back then. And I was like, oh God, really, people. You know, eventually it'll get that bad, but
well, you bring up a good point. You know, one thing I'll never forget was one of these live chats, and I was watching it. I forget whose channel it was on, but they had John Malin on. And they were asking him questions, just different, you know, comics-related questions, and they asked him what his favorite, you know, trade back was, and he said Kingdom Come, which is a great answer. You know, I love Kingdom Come, but even back then, which wasn't really that long ago, Mark Waid already had this huge stigma on him, so for John Malin to say something complimentary of Mark Waid, everyone didn't know how to respond. The whole chat just got quiet for like a minute until they changed the subject. It was really something to behold.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and now there are people talking about how they want to destroy Kingdom Come and everything like that. You basically burn everything down. And I saw little beginnings of that. You know, like you catch an aftermath of the whole Jerry Conway situation, seeing beginnings of that, and it was embarrassing. I'll admit, back in the early part of the year, I got caught up in a little bit of this stuff, and then it was like from my Temple of Doom when Short Round sticks the torch to Indy's side and wakes him up from the black sleep of Kali. And I was like, oh my God, what was I doing? This is dumb, because I got caught up in a little zeitgeist. It was fun for a bit, and I was like, this is so bad. This is so dumb. This is going to backfire. And it has backfired, 5 months later, but it's backfired. And to see people just flip-flop, I really have no thoughts of their own. That's the biggest thing. And if I see a lot of people that they're upset with the whole Jerry Conway situation, I learned, not to say don't meet your heroes, but kind of like that. Don't follow your heroes on Twitter. Don't follow people you don't like. There's certain people I want to still enjoy you as a person. It's like it's just like you have a friend, and you're like 99% of the time your friend's cool. Now 1% of the time you're like, oh God, why am I even friends with this person? And that's how it feels like. And if that's the case, like if I don't get the whole hate watch or hate read. I can watch something bad and enjoy it, like Street Fighter the movie, like that kind of thing. I can enjoy that kind of stuff, but to pay $5 or to suffer through a Twitter feed of $5 for a comic or suffer through a Twitter feed of someone just ranting and raving just so I could reply and get that thrill of maybe riling them up or getting blocked. And I used to do it too. I don't do it no more with the whole oh my God, look who blocked me. And it's just it's not for me. And I try not to impose what I feel. It's like my own philosophy. So maybe somebody will hey, maybe we can reevaluate theirs, or it might just solidify what they believe, which is fine. But I just
a lot of what people are looking for is just to solidify what they already believe, especially on social media. But let's let Marmaduke get in a few words. What do you have to say? No, I don't mean it like that. But
no, I do need to.
Well, I love that Larry King is kind of this is what I see as the strength of. I hate the term comics hate, so I'm just gonna say comics people on Twitter it's not a group think, right? So kind of when I hear King talk, what I hear him saying is of value. At the end of the day, how important is Twitter? We come away from it, maybe we've been heated, but is it that important in the long run? And I'm kind of a divided mind, because on the one hand, Twitter is horrible. I like to use Twitter because I have fun on there, and I see new comic books and I see cool pictures of art. But I think because of the way Twitter was built, nobody really knows what the heck we're supposed to use it for. It was the cool kid site. And then Barack Obama got a Twitter, and every news outlet and politician had a Twitter. And then it was sort of the hot takes site. I think my only counterpoint to King would be, I still view a professional selling a book as being different from a person giving their take. And the problem is, what if you are a creative person and you have, hot takes, and you like to make fun of people and have a good time? And my thought would be, if you want to sell someone something, you should church it up. I think I'm pretty much in agreement with diversity in comics at this point, that you should view selling comic books as more like selling hot dogs than like selling conceptual art. I think it's the left that tends to have the view of art and comic art, that it's this sort of majestic, high poetic thing that, you stupid people can't understand. And I look at comic books as they're fun. And they're things that cost money, so you should be willing to sell them to me. So I get the vibe that just because a pro doesn't say something very professional, that shouldn't be a black mark against them forever. I had a rough interaction with Pat Zurcher today, and I would forgive Pat Zurcher in an instant and go back to his books. But I can't deny that when I've got $4 to buy a book, and I see a book by a guy who insinuated I was a Nazi one time. Even if I like the guy, even if I like, guy or girl, if I like their art, if I like their stories, it's just weird. It's like without having a formal boycott, it still sticks with you, and you still figure, there's another book I could buy. And not only are comic books competing with comic books, they're competing with, they're trying to compete with internet piracy. They're trying to compete with YouTube. They're trying to compete with video games. This is a delicate time for the industry. So if you care about comic books succeeding, I think it would be good for. I'm almost at the point where if I were a CEO of a comic book company, I would be at the point where I'd say, you do not have a social media presence, or the company will essentially give you this guideline about what to tweet about. That's kind of like fastidious. So I can see how, Larry King, you might like dislike something like that because it seems, really uptight, stick up your butt kind of a thing. But I want people who sell stuff on the internet to make selling stuff their primary goal. And then if they want to go, they can create the #1 Scooby-Doo fan avatar if they want, and then they can yell about Trump all day.
Well, I do think it's a little weird. They often say, well, it's my personal Twitter, I can say whatever I want. And that's true, but they wouldn't have tens of thousands of followers either if they were just a random person. People look them up in the first place because they saw their name on the cover of a comic book.
I think I do disagree with you and Richard in that fact that comics should be like hot dogs. I know it's a generalizing term, and it's like, you should just sell it, straight up business, no emotion and everything like that. But you got to think, to run a business, you have to worry about, sometimes you have a lean month, even if you're doing everything right. It's like, whoa, it's going to get good. Oh, you just got to get good at running a business. I mean, there's factors out of your control. And also you're picking up books that you're going to have to, you're paying for, and you pray customers will come in and pick these books up. So you order 20 of, Wildcat, 20 Wildcat comics or whatever. And then 2 people come in and pick it up outside the ones that already have pull lists. So you got 18 books sitting on the shelf collecting dust. If you paid for that you can't return, you can't get money back for them. They're just going to collect dust, take up space, and your shop's already got limited space. You got to store it. One of those storage buildings and everything like that. You go to 24-hour storage, and so this stuff keeps adding up, and you put stuff in the back issue boxes, and that stuff ain't moving because nobody wanted it to begin with. They don't want it for $1. They don't want it for $5. And to treat comics like a consumable item where you eat it, digest it, it's gone. That's like going from one of those Nathan Famous hot dogs that are about a bun bigger than bun length to one of those Vienna sausages. Still paying the same price, but for a Vienna sausage. You know what I'm saying? That's what it feels like with comics. And most people don't take the hot dog or the Vienna sausage and get it graded and slabbed and put up on their wall because they love the art. You put it behind that museum glass and all the protective coatings and all this and that, or display it in a spinner rack. You don't do that to hot dogs. And I'm in the mindset, and it's hard not to get somewhat political. I'm trying to get delved into it, but
can I stop you there for a sec? Because it's really interesting. You're saying it's not like selling hot dogs; it's more like selling fine art. Well, then, so much more so then, if you go to buy a car, the car salesman isn't gonna call you a racist and insult you. It's almost like you're making the argument even stronger. If you're trying to sell a high-end product, wouldn't you want to be even more professional? You go to a jewelry store, they aren't wearing T-shirts or anything.
To tell somebody you have to stock this book, or if you don't do this or don't do that, and then it's kind of these. Let your wallet speak for you. Okay, you don't want my business, I'll go someplace else.
It's kind of like as far as it sounds like you're talking about Jawbreakers.
Well, a little bit, but yeah, it's like what I'm talking is like the main thing. It's kind of related to that as well because it's kind of hard not to. It's everything's bled into it. Yeah. But there are like speak with your wallet, and with Jerry, it's like he was saying like it doesn't work that much to begin with, even though he did work like you said for DC like last year and then Marvel like 2 years ago. Even with that, it's not as there's people that still do some work from time to time like Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends and the guys that did the Spider-Girl book, the good Spider-Girl book, the one from the 90s, the one that spun out of What If. And these guys still work, but they are not the the figureheads of companies. Like with Jerry, even though he has characters he's created on screen, it doesn't. It's like there's nothing. I mean, outside of certain horrific stuff, there's nothing he really can do. Like, oh my God, he's pushing customers away. Look, what customers?
Well, that's why I was talking to him in the first place initially, because he wrote the Legends of Tomorrow comics, and so the CW show Legends of Tomorrow is basically based off of that, and I think he's got a writer credit on that too. So I don't know. It's like he's still got. I mean, to me, if I were a writer for a TV show, I would be so nice to everyone, and I would only be talking about that show. And I don't know if is that just not normal? Like, why wouldn't
we do that? That might be naive a little bit. I'm not calling you naive, but that idea might be a little naive, considering you got to think if you are. There's a lot of people like there's that saying. Like, I've seen this very common. People saying, "Oh, if I was doing this, I'd be talking about it all the time."
Yeah.
Well, you see people doing it, and they don't do that. It's like, they got to maybe take jabs at something or get a little political or rant about a movie or TV show or game, sports, whatever, video game or sports. People to talk about one thing. I've seen, I've followed people and then unfollowed them because they will talk about only like, oh my God, you got to pick up my comic. It's great. Oh my God, it's great. Have you seen this? Oh, this is fan art from a comic. Oh my God. Okay, we get it. I don't follow you just for updates. This isn't, this is why I don't do the whole newsletter thing. Because that's all it is.
Some of these pros, it's not even 50 or 20% of their feed is self-promotion, like, come on.
I think a big part of it is how desperate you are for cash. So if Nudge, like the guy who made Minecraft, he's a multimillionaire, right? He doesn't care at this point if you buy or don't buy Minecraft. He's already sold the rights to Minecraft. It's someone else's business now. When the guy who creates Minecraft is first starting to build it, he's all about wanting it to succeed. He wants his weird little indie game that no one's heard of to be a success. Then when he's a success, he feels more at liberty to speak his mind. And especially once he's left the project and he's no longer part of Minecraft anymore. So maybe comics pros are kind of on a sliding scale like that, where the closer they are towards extreme success, the more willing they are to swap the shit with people or be a little bit more open about their politics. I get what King says when he says you can have it can be dull to follow someone who only talks about here is the 100th panel of the comic I'm working on, but at that point I would follow them based on whether I like their art or not. If I really dig their art, I'm going to follow them and I'm going to enjoy getting that glimpse into their workstation. I sort of dream, if Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo had a Twitter or a YouTube, I would watch them just because I would want to watch them work, and I'd want to see things go from a marble block to an artwork. So that, to me, is the appeal of watching someone who's in comics online make things, is that I love comics and I want to see this come into existence. But a Twitter personality, I don't know, like MomBot or something, someone who is known for having a laugh and making dank memes and roasting people who are like stuffy politicians. They have a very different appeal, and I think that's part of the problem with Twitter. So we've talked obliquely about the Antarctic press situation, and that's kind of like the latest thing I've noticed.
Right.
So it'd be fun. I think it'd be fun for us to just swap thoughts on that. So I'm noticing that a lot of people are saying, well, let's boycott Antarctic press, and it's an old hat argument. Yeah, before people were arguing about boycotting in comic books. I come from a very deep red state background, so I would remember going back decades conversations about boycotting. Maybe it was Fox over putting South Park on TV. Right, so I'm seeing echoes of the culture wars of the early 1990s today happening in comics, and so a lot of people. I agree. I don't want to boycott something just because I'm upset about something. I think it's kind of dumb. So what I want to see people who are creating work I resonate with. I want them to be able to succeed, and I don't want them shut out of the industry because of a political attitude. And King, I think you've correctly said that it's possible to be that left or right. It's possible to be sort of a lunatic who is 100% politics all the time. But I think the imbalance I see is I see the mainstream comics industry as significantly to the left of what it was. Now, even if you say, well, there in the 60s and 70s, there was this really radical, you know, underground, weather underground type of stuff, blowing up buildings and stuff. And I agree. It's not like bad stuff came into existence when millennials started graduating. But I'm worried that the industry is moving toward this point where a political lens would define everything for everyone, and you couldn't possibly question it. You know, women will be drawn with exactly this way to avoid, you know, male gaze and to create body positivity messages. So when we talk about the debate in comics, even though I appreciate Larry saying that it's possible for people on the right to be, you know, salty and stupid online, I still identify myself with the right because I see the left, you know, this academic postmodern left. I see that movement or that gaggle as creating just anti-stories, you know, stories with no depth to them, stories with no meaning to them. That's what animates me, and I really want to see guys like Rags, Zombie, and POTUS Thumb. I want to see them succeed. I want to see Jawbreakers succeed. I want to see everyone who is a creative person, you know, whether they're creating YouTube videos or whether they're writing stories or whether they're making art. I want them to be able to succeed without bowing at the altar of this really weird feminist cult is how I think of it.
See, I know what you're getting at, because that's one of those things. You're dealing with he's dealing with an industry right now that, you know, everybody's like, oh, with the culture war. There was no war. It was a coup. It was in the middle of the night. It's like with when the Baltimore Colts left in the middle of the night and moved to Indianapolis. That's exactly what happened. And it's over. There's no fighting. The only way to fight back is to do your own thing. And a lot of people don't want to do their own thing. They feel validation where it's like, oh my God, I'm not a real artist unless I'm drawing Spider-Man for pennies on the dollar. And then having the thing held over me. Oh, you don't like this? We get somebody from a third world country who can do it cheaper and faster. Because that's the thing. Like, oh, they can't replace me. Yes, they can. They can replace you anytime. There's no one special in comics anymore. There really isn't. I mean, best artists don't even really work full-time anymore. They're doing commissions, private commissions for private collectors, if not for stuff like Mondo and other things like that. So everybody's like, you know, where's a good artist? They don't pay them enough. The comics industry does not pay people enough. And those that do pay, they're okay, they're good. Some of them are great even. But, you know, that, you know, with creators, you know, like when those that bust their ass, like you're seeing like Rags out of all of them is busting his ass.
Yeah.
You know, doing a thing. And he doesn't have the ability because, okay, well, you know, some people, like Richard, he basically used cheat code like in SimCity. You know, get a lot of money, marketing. As far the only thing he's really good at, to my opinion, is marketing. Can't draw, can't write, can't do character designs, but he's good at marketing, good at getting his name out there, good at get paid. And a lot of people say, "Oh, that's something to be praised." Nah, not for me. I've never liked the shark, the businessman shark. You know, they always got to be swimming. You know, the Gordon Gekko types. That's how I see Richard, and that's how I see like Stan Lee. In my opinion, those that put the work in and like basically pay their dues. Rags pays his dues. Timothy Lim, even though he had his marketing and did T-shirts and design work and all this stuff before, you know, Donald Thump, he's paid his dues. Richard hasn't, and a lot of people disliking him.
In terms of creating work, you see Richard. I'd grant that Richard had lightning strike. You know, there had to be a lot of things which worked out just right for Jawbreakers to succeed the way it did, and I think a big mention of and his channel, his channel. You can. You know, people argue about the YouTube algorithms all the time. So the thing about Richard is he made a comic and everybody made fun of him. And you know, when I read the first Jawbreakers, you know, I kind of laughed a bit at it, and I thought, well, you know, I like his channel, but I don't know if I would pay $4 for a book. And I think I have to disagree with Larry King. So the reason I decided to support Jawbreakers is there are two reasons for it. One is I looked at John Malin's art and I thought, okay, Richard's stories look better when another artist is at the helm. And the second thing I was thinking is what Jawbreakers meant for everyone is it's a way of saying no to a really controlling group. So EVS, he's a naughty boy. He's an alt-right Nazi. Well, John Malin, he's a naughty boy. He Bleeding Cool's hit piece on them. When Diversity in Comics got those people on his book, I think he knew what he was doing, and I think he knew he was saying no to a really toxic element of the comic book industry, I think. So the problem is am I supporting Jawbreakers because I actually think it'll be good, or am I supporting Jawbreakers just as a middle finger to SJWs? And I've thought about that a lot, and I'm willing to give Jawbreakers Lost Souls a chance, because I'm willing to give anyone at least one shot, and if he delivers a good book, then my DNC will have more credit in his bank for the next time he makes a Jawbreakers book. If he delivers a stinker, then I'll probably be less willing to part with my money. I think that I think DNC's role in everything that's been happening is that his YouTube channel was the no that I was looking for. I spent years kind of outside of superhero comics, and I'll grant this, I'm not the biggest superhero comic fan. I haven't read as much as a lot of other people in the community, but I was waiting to get back in, and then just hearing a guy make fun of Squirrel Girl art, but then also tell me, here's a good book. That it was like someone finally gave me permission. Oh my gosh, I finally know how to go into a comic book store and find something that isn't Squirrel Girl. So
you're kind of referencing like the good old days of DNC's channel, when he would just, make fun of Squirrel Girl or do Marvel before SJW or something. I mean, I still watch him, but it's like 100% Twitter drama now.
I didn't like the Twitter drama either. I perceived that as diminishing a little bit when he started focusing on Jawbreakers a lot. I think he was trying to church I think a lot of things that people have to think about is how important is DNC to everything. I perceive him as the one who helped people who dislike awful comics, helped us say, okay, here's someone who's making fun of it. We watch his videos. This helps us. I mean, he's given language to people to describe some of these things. Like, it might be even hard to notice that something's wrong until someone looks at these comic books and says, well, hey, notice this. Notice how flat-chested this character is. Notice how this white guy is getting beaten the heck up by a woke character. So I still appreciate Richard to this day for the role he's played in getting people to come together. But I don't think that we can rely on him to be sort of a sole, what is it? Athanasia's Contramundum. You can't rely on any single internet figure to be the sole voice against everything you hate. You have to be an independent thinker, and you have to create content. So, So when Larry King, praises Rag Zombie and praises Timothy Lynn, I'm on board. I want to see them succeed. I want them to see them do great. I want them to have top-selling books. I think I'd only disagree with him when he says that the reason I support Jawbreakers is I see enough promise in it that I expect to get a good story when I actually read it, and I see him as having a positive good for other people. So I found out about POTUS Thumb through DNC. I found out about Rag Zombie through DNC. So that role of just pointing people in the right direction and saying, hey, here's a good book, that does give something of value to other people who want to read good comics.
He is a unifying force. I think for whatever reason, that's why he's been so successful. I mean, the reason we're probably all talking today is because, one way or another, we found each other, and it was most likely through DNC and the community that surrounds it. I mean, there was all these little, mid-sized channels like Douglas Ernst and Captain Cummings and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, it's like everyone went to DNC. About a year ago, it seems like last summer, it was just like, it got huge, and now it's just
why that happened though. It's the milkshake thing. I know it's
right.
Many things really, but
that was the big event.
But it's that kind of thing. Like what one example is the Tim Seeley, hack/fame. He did Batman and other DC stuff. I think did Nightwing as well. I'm not mistaken.
I'm a fan of Tim Seeley.
And I like Tim Seeley. I do too. Like, he seems like a cool dude. And then me and my brother was reading the Milestone imprint. Things that never happened. Just trying to start shit. Because that's what he does. It's like, I'm just joking. It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank. Oh, yeah, buy my comic. And buy my comic to piss off at SJW. Because that's what it seems like a lot of people, they do.
What do you think, Marmaduke? You're probably more in a more positive on Malin. Not that I'm disagreeing with either of you. I'm just curious what you think.
I support the Kickstarter, and I still click with what King is saying, right? I will forgive. I have a very forgiving attitude toward bad art. Like if Daryl AO was nice to everybody, I could have been someone who would say, "Hey, Daryl AO, you know, I dig your drawing. It's silly. It makes me laugh."
Little garden comics.
Right, those really creepy little weird comics, right?
Dude,
because
those things
they're terrible, but
they don't make sense though. I mean, the art is one thing, but like they don't even make sense. If they, Peanuts, Charles Schultz put some good stuff together, but it's not because of the art. Like if Daryl AO did something like that, I don't know. I'm getting off on a tangent. Go ahead.
Well, I'm kind of making a weird point. So the point is that like I come from this really conservative in terms of art taste. I believe there are objective standards to beauty, which made me one out of 100 of people in SJW art school think there's such a thing as an objective standard of beauty. But I'm a art tutor, so when I'm teaching young people how to draw, they obviously don't draw very well because they're learning the basics. So I don't want to just build up people's ego and have everyone gets a participation trophy award, but I talk about art where I say, okay, you're doing this wrong, but here's what's charming about your work, or here is I notice you like to draw action scenes in your comics, so you may what is it about action that interests you? So I dislike bad art. I try to critique bad art, but I try to be I want to encourage people to make art. I don't want them to stop making art because of my critique. I want them to kind of like take my critique and say, this hand sucks. And then I want them to go right back to making art. I want to see more, because that's how you develop the habits of becoming a great artist, is you draw until you get your 10,000 hours. And by the end of it, you develop that. So I look at Malin and I see weaknesses, and because I would judge Malin not just by the standard of DC artists. I would judge him by, I judge him by Michelangelo. But I would still support a book by a Malin, because when I go to comics, I go to them looking for a fun action story. I don't necessarily go to them with the same art critic hat on that I might when I'm going to a museum. But so I get where King is coming from. It might just be a matter of taste and how much it will take for you to be willing to part with your money for a book. Now maybe the book comes out and the art is subpar, and I'll feel stupid about parting with my money. Or maybe the book will come out and Malin will really have cranked out something above and beyond even his regular work. So I'll review it when it comes out, and I'll be brutally honest. Even if I like Diversity in Comics channel, I'm not going to review Diversity in Comics books and pretend they're good if I think they're bad. I guess all I'm trying to say is I'm a little bit more willing to get burned, because I'm willing to give comic books a shot sight unseen, and that's meant I've gotten burned by a few SJW comics this year too.
One I didn't get burned by last year, and I put money towards this year, was the comic Time Cheetah. It's a time traveling cheetah, man cheetah, who just speaks and growls. And the last volume is freaking hilarious. So yeah, the second volume's I think still going on. It's already been funded, but damn fun comic. But
is that a Kickstarter?
Yeah, it's a Kickstarter book. It's Time Cheetah Volume 1, Secret of Stalin's Island. It's like a mixture of, best way I could describe it, if you mix Venture Brothers, old school Johnny Quest, and Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, all together. It's kind of like that. It's very fun.
Okay.
Very fun.
You'll have to link me to that later.
Oh, sure thing. But I looked something up, and everybody's like, oh my God, because of Jawbreakers. Yes, it made a lot of money. Okay. I guess also I'm very desensitized about life. I mean, I think about the massive quasars, gamma bursts, supermassive black holes, a solar flare that could cook us all. Like, I think of these things, like these things in my head. So I'm kind of also seeing dead bodies at a young age, brutally damaged bodies, car accidents, stuff like that. It's really messed me up. Also, just life in general, it'll take its toll. So, but I was looking through. It's like, okay, Jawbreakers, Lost Souls, 112-page one-shot graphic novel. That's the original graphic novel is what they should call it, but whatever. But going through, so you got 50-page Jawbreakers, Lost Souls. That is and this is accompanied by 25-page story, Jawbreakers book 2. So, who's drawing that? Because Lost Souls is being drawn by Malin, so that's 50 pages. Is that 25 extra pages? Is that
what Brett is drawing?
It might be, but not the most clear. But nobody cared because I honestly think that they were just doing this to people. A lot of people were like, "Oh, this is triggering SJWs. Throw money at it, like it's a stripper on a pole. Throw money at it." It's
a movement book. I found that really interesting when Marmaduke was talking about that. How he really had to think about it. Was he buying the book because he wants the book? He likes Jawbreakers, or was it just to stick it to the other side, so to speak? And honestly, I have to think at least the majority of people are probably doing it, just to support diversity in comics and because they agree with what he's been saying. Not that the book is subpar or not worth it or anything, but I think if it was just another G.I. Joe type book that was just out there in the ether without all of this buzz and craziness, I mean, it's insane. With Arctic Press and everything, and Comic Store supposedly getting vandalized, and just on and on, without all that constant buzz, I don't think it would be doing quite as well. I mean,
I don't think it would be either. But
I mean, there's just no way.
Well,
Alt Hero was that, and he had all these mysterious $5,000 backers, right? The art from Alt Hero looks bothersome. I can't look at it and just feel at peace. There's something always wrong about it. And yet,
I was thinking that too when Zach posted that he passed Alt Hero, and I started looking at it, and I was like, wow, this got a lot of backing. It doesn't really look that good.
Here's what's scary. This is what I find funny. I didn't know about the book. I maybe heard about it once, but it didn't click. Something that happens. There's something going on. You hear about something one time. If it doesn't click, then it doesn't click, right? Well, that book, Patriotica, and somebody was talking about it, and I was like, okay, let me look this up. It sounds like it might be one of these, like, oh, it might trigger some people. Well, I actually looked at it. It looks like a damn good book. The art is great, and I'm like, this is just messed up. Patriotica, compared to Alt Hero and then Jawbreakers and everything. You look at these 3 books. Patriotica has better art, looks more interesting. Panels look great. Not saying Malin can't draw panels, maybe from script. That's another thing. He's working off of Richard's script. If you've seen his art, you've seen his stuff. Dear God, get a poser program. Get a computer to draw for you, and just But hey, who needs to learn how to do something when you can just throw some money at the problem? But but you look at Patriotica. The artwork's beautiful. I mean, it's like one of the characters, I guess the main character, she basically hulks out, kind of like what Fairchild did in Gen 13, and like clothes ripping this and stuff. But the artwork is beautiful. Nobody talks about it. Nobody cares. And kind of they talk about Vox Day's thing, but it's like mediocrity succeeds far more often than like you don't want to be groundbreaking. You don't want to be the first. Like, here's the thing, Captain Cummins, he's kind of like that first, the anti SJW comic guy.
Yeah,
he was. To Richard, you don't want to be the first step. That's the thing. You don't want to be groundbreaking because you are. They just step all over you. You still might have a prominent presence, but it happens.
He was definitely diversity in comics before diversity in comics was.
If you're sticking to it and you're making a profit, that makes you a pro. You make profit. Unfortunately, by that definition, Richard's a pro, which also that works. He is kind of a man whore, or just a whore in general. Give me these shekels, yes.
I always get the impression that you really don't like Zach.
Here's the thing. Do I absolutely hate him and wish the Thanos thing turned him into dust?
Oh,
not
dear.
really. But maybe somebody needs to humble his ass, because there are people far more talented. But that's the thing about life. Life isn't fair. And there's these people that will go around and just they're white knighting him over all this. Like, you're white knighting a Marine who has at least 150. I actually did them kind of a rough math. Everything including the book printing, shipping the books out. I don't know if you knew this, but the rough estimate, I did a U.S. flat rate. So $7.05 per book. There's 6,221 books. That's because that's how many backers. That's not including T-shirts and other stuff as well.
Yeah, I consider you part of our little community, and it's not like everyone in our community has to follow DNC, but you're definitely like amongst people who do.
Yeah, but that's see, you don't have to. And I found out the hard way. You don't have to follow certain people to see their stuff in your timeline. It's like you can't escape them. It's like they're stalking you. So it's like Richard stalking me. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude, go away.
Well, what do you think, Marmaduke? You want to weigh in on all?
I'm thinking hard, because what's interesting is Larry King is kind of offering a counterpoint to most of the people who are like not SJW Comics Twitter. The thing is, since like the early days of DNC's channel, I've known that he is the kind of person where he said this about himself: you either love him or you hate him, and I've gotten that vibe, and I love him in part because he helped me get back into comics. So that's at least, you know, one good thing. He's always done it. Tomorrow, you know, if he sells me a stinker book, and I'm grumpy that he sold me a stinker book, he will at least have gotten me back into superhero comics. And I definitely agree that we don't all need to follow DNC. We don't all need to like his content. We've talked a lot about, you know, just what makes a quality comic. You know, so when Larry, you know, makes fun of Jawbreakers a bit, you know, I click with that because you don't want to buy a bad book, you want to buy a good book. Now I think we just differ on, you know, what are we willing to spend our money on, and I was more willing to spend my money to give Jawbreakers a chance. And you called Jawbreakers a movement book, and like the difficulty for me is I kind of have to grant that there is a movement aspect to Jawbreakers that wasn't true of Patriotica. Now I kind of missed the boat of Patriotica because that was coming out just as I was starting to get back and, you know, timidly buy my first few comics. So maybe the thing I challenge Larry to think about is, can DNC have a good effect for others? Is he going to be the only one who benefits, or is the success of Jawbreakers maybe an indication that there's a market there for a certain type of story? So when you look at Jawbreakers, what type of story is he signaling that he wants to tell? He wants to tell a story with masculine men going on an adventure and fighting King Kong with a beautiful girl, right? It's this romantic idea. So the movement aspect of the book is, I want to say to Marvel and DC, I like good heroic fantasy books, and I try to send that message to them too by buying good heroic fantasy books that Marvel and DC actually have put out. I haven't boycotted them just because I'm grumpy at some of their prose. So what I would like to see is, I would like to see more people have success like Richard has had. So if you look at Richard and say, well, he's not as talented as an artist as so-and-so, why does he have more success than so-and-so? Rather than saying I would be grumpy at DNC for that, I would rather say, well, then let's all go support this other so-and-so who's doing better art. Let's move the needle for them. Let's make them richer. Let's make them richer than I was getting my words mangled up. Let's make them richer than DNC. And so I kind of see that's what YouTube's role is. And, you know, they're going to be DC channels, they're going to be Marvel channels, they're going to be indie book channels. But I see the value of looking at a comic and saying, here's what's good about the comic, here's what's bad about the comic. Is, for me, I like to see things about the comic and have a feel for what I'm getting into, and maybe have someone warn me away from the bad book. I like the store owner at my comic book shop, because if he sees I'm about to buy something he knows is bad, he will actually take it out of my pile and say, you do not want this book, it's garbage. And that gives me a lot of trust in him when he'll say, this is a good book, you should add this to your pull list. So I want comics YouTubers and comics Twitter people to kind of do the thing that my local comic book shop owner did for me. He found out that I had no interest in Valiant. He gave me his personal copies of good Valiant books as a way of trying to get me hooked on a new series of books. So we've talked about DNC a lot. You know, is Jawbreakers good? Is Jawbreakers bad? Is he a good artist? Is he a lame artist? Is he overrated? How much of this is due to Twitter drama? But when we talk about Jawbreakers as a movement book, I think we can't miss if it's a movement book, what's the movement? So the movement behind alt hero is, we are alt-right and we like to trigger some people, and this looks triggering. There may be a dimension of, let's trigger some SJWs to the support of Jawbreakers, but I think there's also an element of, we would like heroic, problematic stories as something we want to see in the industry at large. And we want to see independent creators be able to tell these problematic stories without getting crushed by the Mary Sues and the everyday feminisms of the world. So I guess really you could say the difference between me and Larry is I'm a bit more of an optimist, and you even said this, Larry. You look at supernovas and all the pain and death in the world. So there's almost kind of an optimism pessimism distinction, and I go back and forth between being an optimist and a pessimist. But I'm optimistic that if Jawbreakers succeeds, then that's not the end of potential success. Then so-and-so, who we've never even heard about yet, that could be the next success.
To see any beneficial thing, there will be people that benefit, and they happen to be named Richard Meyer, and that's first and foremost. That's it. I'm not going to claim to be some altruistic, do-gooder saint looking out for people, left and right. I take care of my own. I take care of myself first and foremost. The people that treat me decent, that do decent work, solid people. And when I think of solid people, like, hey, they can shit post, they can troll a little bit, they can throw a little heat here or there, bust somebody's balls. But calling people out just to make YouTube bucks. Oh my God, this video got demonetized. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo for you, Richard. Oh my God. Wait, we need to do something. Sharpen your pitchforks, folks. Douse your torches with lighter fluid. We got to get out there. Daddy needs help.
All right. So we're really getting at just the attitudinal difference, right?
Oh, yeah.
I agree with you in the spirit that I don't want to go out and roast someone just because DNC would tell me to do so. But I guess, so we're kind of in agreement that it's not a good idea to just go follow anyone blindly. But yeah. we clearly have like very different perspectives on diversity in comics, where my whole channel is literally named after a diversity in comics in joke, and I still listen to him and I respond to things he thinks about because it kind of helps me think through issues of comics. Just throughout this whole conversation, you've thrown out the name of multiple books I've never even touched, right?
See,
I'm a fake geek guy, in a lot of ways on certain comics. Yeah, I've read comics as a kid, but I'm kind of coming back into it as an adult, almost with fresh eyes, and discovering some of this stuff for the first time. And so maybe the difference for me is I'm coming into this community out of an SJW art school where my SJW art professors are kind of fresh on my mind, and so that gives me a different perspective where I can say, you could be right. You could be right that, it's not fair that I wouldn't begrudge DNC his success because I'm enough of a capitalist that I figure, if you succeed, well, good. That's capitalism. But I lost the train of thought there. But
I know what you're getting at, though. But it's like I see him, even though there's like people say they're against gatekeepers, but he's a gatekeeper for more. A lot of people go to him, unintentional, possibly, intentionally, perhaps. It's everybody's call, but you have the oh my God, I got to see here what he thinks of this book. Oh, he's taking the hit reading this horrible comic, paying money for a bad comic. Well, I'm doing it so you don't have to. That Linkara crap ain't going to cut it. I
don't know. I mean, people can definitely dissent. People definitely dissent. Like Action Comics 1000, Diversity in Comics didn't like that, and pretty much every other channel did. Yellow Flash liked it, everybody, and even in Yellow Flash's review of it, he was like, I watched Zach's video and he didn't like it, but I did, and here's why. He's not the king or anything.
That's right.
I think you're right that there's definitely a huge segment that hangs on his every word, and they're gonna buy only things he recommends or whatever. But quite a few people too are willing to just make up their own opinions.
I think it's going to be, we're going to have to look back at this. 10 years are going to pass. We're going to look back at this, and we're going to have to ask, did Diversity in Comics, did he end up making good comics, or did he end up making bad comics? And the heat of the Twitter drama will have cooled by that. And it'll be easier to look at it and say, well, this was a good book. And, maybe it'll be a mix. Maybe he'll have some good books come out, and maybe he'll have some bad books come out. But there's a dimension to this where, time has to pass, and then we have to kind of look back on it with, less heat or less emotional investment, and just see what was good, what was bad. So, Yeah, so we've talked about DNC a lot, and it's almost kind of like DNC's hijacked the discussion, because I think
True.
the reason he came up is, you know, there's the drama over Antarctic Press, there's the drama over Jawbreakers, Lost Souls. He's significant enough that you kind of have to talk about him. You know, love him or hate him, you kind of have to talk about him because it's what's happening. But what I think that what I think is sort of the agreed upon point, despite every direction we've gone, is we'd like to read good comics. We'd like to read comics with as good art as possible, as good stories as possible. Maybe we can be a little forgiving. I mean, Larry, you kind of roasted John Malin a little bit, but you recognize that he's not the worst, you know, compared
far
to
from it. Far from it. But I don't know if it was the speed of it, but there's certain stuff when you look at a character, you see certain things like that. The main guy, I was like, is that a Fu Manchu mustache? Because the art's so flat. And it's like I guess it's supposed to be a Fu Manchu mustache, but like usually when you do stuff like that, you know, you're supposed to do like the hash, like very tight hash to show like hair fibers and everything, and then do like a dark blue to show like, you know, that's hair. If it's like a person that has black hair or very dark hair, to show that. And I was like, you know, yeah, I'm trying to tell a guy that got paid money, like, Larry, who are you, you know, whatever. But it's, hey, everybody's got an opinion, you know. But the guy has black eyes, like a doll's eyes, you know. And you know, there's like a lot of just like, if you look at it, but nobody's, you know, like either out of devotion, just elation, like, oh my God, the comics happening, oh great, or whatever. I was like, you know, I'm looking at my comics right now. I love good comics. I have the hardcovers and have you ever heard of the artist Barry Windsor Smith?
Yes, I think I thought. Is he on Twitter? I know I've heard that.
I don't think so. He's the guy who basically, even though Conan was the Robert E. Howard creation, him and Roy Thomas, they basically made Conan, as well as John Buscema back in the 70s. He did a series of comics called, it was these oversized black and white stories, Young Gods and Friends and the Freebooters, as well as Paradox Man. He also did a book called Adastra in Africa, which is really Life Death #3, which was the Storm Forge stories that him and Claremont were doing. He basically plotted this out. Marvel said no, so he did it as his own character and put it out. It's a beautiful story about, you know, life and loss and dealing with, you know, things out of your control. Beautiful stuff. Nobody knows about this stuff. Also, it's kind of hard to find because it's out of print, other stuff like that. Looks like Strangers in Paradise, about criminals and lesbians and artists. You know, what people would call the typical SJW book, but it's beautiful. It's beautifully done. And it's a series of what they call pocket books. They're about manga size, and it's the entire series in 7 volumes. And there's so many good books out there. But it's like, oh, I want good books. They exist already. There are so many comics. These new people coming into comics, for good or bad. Richard has brought people into comics, which is good. That will be his legacy, bringing people in. If they wake up and realize that just starting Twitter drama to get views,
and when you talk about it that enthusiastically, that enthusiasm is infectious. So I'm kind of coming. I sort of represent the person who was a comics reader and then came back into it. And so I hear enthusiasm like that, and I say, oh, good grief, I gotta go get that yesterday. And so you've granted, you know, what, love or hate DNC, he has brought new people into this. But you're also seeing this dimension of let's all hate Mark Waid. That means nothing. That doesn't go good to the comic book shop owner. All right, so Larry King, let me pitch an idea at you, and you tell me what you think. Okay, so I've said this over and over again on my channel, and if like I could distill every video I've ever done into one thing, it would be this. So my SJW teachers, you know, the question is, are they just a few goofballs or are they significant? And my thought is every year they get a class of about 20 students, and these 20 students go into the art class, and in theory they're supposed to learn how to make art. Let's learn how to draw. Let's learn how to paint. But that's not what they learn. They learn how to be political activists, and they learn how to yell at old artists. They want to destroy not literally destroy, but metaphorically, they want to destroy what Western art is. So Michelangelo is bad. Leonardo da Vinci is bad. And so then, of course, when they look at comics, what do they see? They see badness. And so every year, a new crop of 20 students go into these classes. They're taught theoretically, in an art class where you're supposed to learn art, they're taught, let's deconstruct everything old and let's replace it with this new vision. And even if they don't make art like this, they're taught, art like Carolee Schneemann pulling a scroll out of her unmentionables because it's supposed to be an anti-male gaze message. So even if they don't do that kind of art, they're taught that is what good art is because it has the right political message about the male gaze. So what I'm worried about is every year, the artists who the main companies are going to be hiring, they're going to be hiring art students from this pool of people. Now, talented people who just really want to succeed, they really want to make successful art, they don't give two hoots about this sort of weird, chic, postmodern art culture. They're going to succeed no matter what because they're dedicated, they're committed. And maybe it's sad that they don't get the attention they deserve. But what I'm worried about is it's going to be harder and harder and harder to find the stories that you like, the art that you like, as long as we have this problem of the teachers thinking that art is politics and that's all it can be, that beauty actually is a bad thing. So when we talk about DNC, and we've had like this very sharp disagreement on whether we like him and whether we want to support Jawbreakers, but we've kind of had this connection that we don't want DNC to define everything there is to talk about comics. We want to talk about good comics. So what my pitch to you is that in my thinking, DNC represents not just a middle finger to trigger SJWs, but he represents someone saying no just because you think that women with large breasts is problematic and that it infects the mind of the young children. Even if not everything about the art is good, if he's willing to say no to that, then what I think that represents is the possibility that other people can say no to that as well. So you may not be the biggest, you may disagree with DNC on a lot of things, but if you want to tell beautiful stories about heroes and beautiful female characters, you have to be able to say no to this little clique of postmodern artists who think it's hanging breasts on the wall and screaming, and so you kind of nailed me, right? I do support DNC in part because I think it's important. It's important to, what am I trying to say? It's not that I just want to trigger these people, but I want to say no to them because then that makes it easier for the next person to say, no, I don't have to draw Squirrel Girl the way you tell me to draw Squirrel Girl so that you won't call me a sexist. I will draw Squirrel Girl the way that I think beautiful art should be drawn. So that's kind of my pitch because you dig comics. You have lots of comics you want to talk about. You have lots of comics that you want to introduce people like me to. And we've agreed that DNC brings new people into this. But beyond just triggering SJWs, I think that what Jawbreakers represent is a moment for us to say, no, that the nasty little art professor who's got, I don't know, like period blood art, that person does not get to tell us what our comic book should be. So that's my pitch. So what do you think, Larry? Roast me.
Okay, here's the thing. What you're talking about is pushback, but you're also talking about hurting them, not destroying them, but hurting them, because hurting is much more effective. It stings longer, and that could be the richer thing, but also the Jawbreakers and everything like that, but also the pushback. But a lot of it comes down to your willpower. If you have to be told, or somebody, I'll go pick a book I've never heard of or seen, like that cover looks good. That weird, and that's a weird sounding name. Or going through the back issues. All right, I'm picking that up. That's an odd looking cover. All right, what the hell is that supposed to be? All right, I'm getting that. Stuff like that. More interesting, but also just I'll pick up stuff on volition. Sometimes it'll be great. Sometimes it'll be a stinker. Whatever. I'm gonna take the chance. I don't need to be told, hey, check this out. But a lot of people, they kind of read the TV guide, as it were. As the old time man saying, go through the TV guide, and you don't have to, read the TV guide, you don't have to watch TV. And that being the case, where you have these professors, you have these teachers from any grade school all the way up to colleges and universities, the pushback on them can only go so far. Like 90% of them are of the same mind. When they're not, they ostracize that, like the outsider. It's the body snatchers, the 70s body snatchers. They point and screech. And that's exactly what they do. So, and it's the problem with that is there's only so much people can do. You want big-titted women, you want dudes that look like they bench press a car without superpowers. You have a tiny waist. That's another thing. The whole Rob Liefeld, this and that, but it's cartoony. People mocked Kirby too.
Yeah.
People still do, like, that ugly blocky art. No. You know what? People gonna have their opinion. And that's another thing. Changing people's minds is very hard. You can get a lot of people like-minded. Like, I mean, if Richard wanted to, he probably could start some kind of Jim Jones-like cult. And there's a lot of people
doubt. I don't know about Jim Jones, but he has so much influence. It's insane. It's weird because I see this stuff on Twitter all day. I kind of get used to it, but then I'll go on Facebook, and it'll be in all the comic book face group books too. And now I'm seeing today, like, there's news stories about it. There's a CBR article about it. This Canadian news channel's got a story about it. It's like, how big is this Richard business gonna get? He really does have an influence in the comic book industry.
And that right there, you're the influence, and that's another thing I wanted to mention earlier. You actually reminded me of that. There's a lot of people who say, like, how did this bad writer, how did this bad artist keep getting work? You know why? Because you people and Richard, you talk about them, you tweet at them, you mention them, you make videos on them. Oh my God, this horrible SJW did this. Oh my God. And so when that person searches them on Google, that video comes up. You keep them in the zeitgeist. You may be like, a lot of people are like, they don't consider themselves the villain in the story. I'm doing right by the world. I'm putting their name out there so I can warn people.
Yeah, most people don't consider themselves to be the bad guy no matter what.
Well, I do. I'm pretty villainous. I'm the kind of person, like, the other saying, I wouldn't piss on you to put you out if you're on fire. I'm the kind of person I just laugh and point.
You'll bully walruses and other sea animals.
Hey, that walrus deserved it, and that's Wilford Brimley, not me. If every single comic book woman had big ass, big tits, thin waist, pretty face, all of them, every single one, it'd be boring. When you have ugly and pretty and bland and like all over it make a much more rich tapestry. I don't like to call it, it ain't really diversity, it's rich. Making an environment rich and not just the same flavor. Oh, it's a woman, but it's, she's white or Asian or black or Native American or Middle Eastern or whatever. They all look the same. That's not
because
cool.
It reflects real life. Because it reflects real life. You look out in the real world and you see all kinds of varieties of people. Every shape of nose, every body shape, every head shape you can think of, and it helps absorb you into the world. If every single woman is a blonde bombshell, you're not absorbing into the world. So what I'm clicking with is, I openly identify as a political conservative on my channel, and I have since the very early days. So it's important for me as a conservative to remember that people to my left, it's not like they're always wrong all the time. They can observe correct things. So when people say there should be variety in how women are drawn in comics and how everybody is drawn in comics, you can click with that and say, yeah, I don't want to look at the exact same drawing of a woman with the exact same face all day, every day, in every single comic. I want to see variety. But I talk about SJWs a lot. Maybe it's just because of my educational background and because that makes them seem bigger in my mind because they were all my teachers. But I see them as taking an argument like that and then pushing it too far. So can we have fat superhero characters? Yeah, I'm down for it. Let's see it. But then they go beyond that to say idealized superhero characters are bad. Idealized superhero characters will actually make you sexist. And
that's when I started to have a problem with it. Exactly. A good comic, especially if they're on the street or whatever, should have all kinds of people. They should all be different races and sizes and everything, just like in real life. But what they're saying is you can't have idealized people, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
and
that is.
I agree with that, what you're saying. That's so ridiculous. And on top of it, they always want to support free speech, supposedly, and choice, and you should be able to do and draw whatever you want. If you want to draw, a weird animal like the pervert, like that Michelle Perez book. If you want to draw that, that's fine. But if you want to draw Superman and Lois Lane like in a normal relationship, that's a problem. Everything's turned upside down, and I'm not even that old. Like, when did this happen?
Have you guys read, not Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, but Scott McCloud's Reinventing Comics?
No, but it sounds like I should.
I read it and I didn't care for it. I don't really like Scott McCloud because I read his comics. Have you read his comic Zot?
I did read Zot. Yes, I read Understanding Comics, and at first I loved it, and then I read Zot, and I read Reinventing Comics, and I got a bad taste in my mouth. So tell me what you think of what you thought of Zot, and I'll see if
my thing of Zot is it's like a guy that had a semi-decent idea but no real way to execute it, and after like trying and in a way failing. So the comic in a way is a failure. It's a good idea stretched out way too long. Talk about decompressed. There's a lot of kind of false starts in the book. It's not a well-drawn book, not a well-written book. The concepts, I mean, Epic, the imprint from Marvel, were doing better concepts, like with the multiversal kind of deal. Not straight up multiversal, but like Michael Moorcock's Elric stories that were coming out during the '80s. Far better offering. If you want to read stuff, we go from Marvel Epic. But if we were in the '80s, so we're talking past. So you plan on doing a time travel trip, there you go, folks. But
back issues, right?
back issues as well. I don't know about I think there are some collections out there, maybe on Amazon. I don't know. But and then go from Zot to reading Understanding Comics, it was just understanding and then reinventing. It was like a guy who changed the battery on a car one time, is trying to tell you how to make a car.
Right. He had one series, and then he went. The strength of Understanding Comics, I think, what appealed to me about it when I first read it was I originally was in a non-SJW school where everyone was very, very traditionally minded. So to them, comics were kind of like this stupid thing for little kids, and you should all draw like Michelangelo. So when I first read Understanding Comics, I liked it because I said, here's someone who's saying something about comics that I've always felt, that they have this great potential for telling stories, and you don't have to draw like Michelangelo to make a good comic. They're a different kind of thing. And so then I went back and read Zot because of my positive reaction to Understanding Comics. And I kind of had a similar reaction to you. I thought, well, there's a good idea here. It's a little stretched out, maybe because of his manga influence. And then I finally went to Reinventing Comics. And that's where I started to get the sense that for someone like Scott McCloud, they see comics as a vehicle for more than just the male power fantasy. They see comics as a vehicle for creating a new kind of society. It was almost weirdly religious, how he was trying to describe the potential of comics in Reinventing Comics. He wasn't talking about them as vehicles for stories at all. He was talking about them as some sort of method for instruction that would permeate all of culture. And so then, again, SJW Art School, I see the eggheads. When they talk about comics, Scott McCloud is very prominent in their thinking. So they might be, writing essays critiquing Scott McCloud, but for someone who read Spider-Man growing up, Spider-Man's their introduction to the world of comics. For an egghead who looks at comics as, oh, this is a vehicle of creating culture and of perpetuating our politics, then Scott McCloud and the intelligentsia are their introduction to comics. So I've kind of in the back of my head had an idea for a while where I want to talk about reinventing comics, and I don't want to call it like ground zero of SJW Marvel or anything clickbaity like that. But part of what I think all of this fighting is there are people who have a very different idea for what the heck comics should be. And if you just like fun stories and you just like fun art, you are already at odds with people who think that comics are going to be their vehicle for inculcating their ideas about, I don't know, economics or 52 genders or whatever.
They have kind of a small view too, like comics can only be one thing. It's like saying novels, all novels can only be adventure. It's like, okay, it's just a medium. It's like saying music. There's only one type of music. Everyone, you can only have the one kind. It's like there should be all kinds. Okay. I did want to come back to this too. The talking about Antarctic Press and Jawbreakers and stuff. Like, it shouldn't be controversial from either side. Like, I don't think it was right for people to pressure Antarctic Press into not publishing something, but I don't know. it doesn't make sense, you know, like why wouldn't something so mundane be allowed? On its surface, there's really nothing about Jawbreakers that would be controversial. Oh, but then from the other side, I don't think it was right for people to pressure shops to have to carry it, or if they decide not to carry it, that they're, you know, they should be stigmatized for that. But it's like both sides went to the extreme to the point that I couldn't agree with it, you know, like I think shops should be able to have it, and I think Antarctic Press should have been able to print it. But for everyone to just be like, no, you can't do that, especially when it's a medium like comics. And there's all kinds of crazy, like horrible, terrible comics out there too, like Crossed. Do not look up Crossed. Like, that is an abominable thing. And this is just such a mundane book, you know. It's like, what's the deal? Why is this such a big issue for both sides? And they took both sides in some ways took a stance that was very kind of fascist. Like, it didn't agree with free speech, in my opinion.
You know, the Antarctic Press thing. There's people, oh, yeah. I'll never give Antarctic Press a dime. I'm like, I guarantee you, before 2 days ago, you'd never even heard of them. But as far as the whole Scott McCloud thing, I wanted to mention this: the Scott McCloud, Alison Bechdel. You know, they get that stupid Bechdel test, which everybody's like, oh my God, you know, two women characters talking about something, talking together that isn't dealing with men. You know, that kind of stuff. That Bechdel test.
Yep.
I'm not saying she's a bad artist. My opinion is I don't care for her work. But McCloud, her, and these people that are kind of, you know, these revolutionary or whatever, quote unquote, or like very influential, are that for the wrong reasons. I feel that's why when it comes to schooling and teaching, where I'm like, you know, Marmaduke, we're on the doll. Did the SJWs touch you?
Right. And, yeah, and I deserve that because I talk about it a lot. Yeah. I think about it. I think about it a lot. You know, it was a chunk of my life, and I will sometimes just pause and think and say, okay, what did I learn about? Why was I taught that? Because I like to think about what's the future going to be. You know, what kind of world are they going to create? A while ago, you said this, and we didn't get a chance to touch on it. You kind of said, well, if your art teachers are that way, what are you going to do? Sure, you can push back, but that's not going to change their minds. That's not going to change the art school. And the thing I get. You could say you could roast me and say I worry about this too much, and maybe I do. But what I worry about is in our lifetime, it's going to get harder and harder to enjoy our hobby. And all right, this connects to what DC Fans United said. Why did we have a big fat standoff? You called it fascist. I kind of like the word totalitarian for it, where one group of people said, you know, Antarctic may not carry this book, and another, or I'm going to boycott Antarctic even for thinking of publishing a DNC book. Another group said, I'm going to boycott Antarctic. If you were not already buying tons of Antarctic books, that threat to boycott means nothing. It means nothing to threaten to boycott if you weren't already buying tons of their work. And so what I think has happened is we have a hobby we love, and something in politics has come charging into it to our chagrin. And it's happened in football. It's happened in Magic the Gathering. It happened in video games. I think it's going to happen everywhere. So if Larry, yeah, that was a good roast. Now we're in the dog doll. Did my SJW art teachers touch me? And
that was really clever and off the cuff.
Solid roast. All right, but the reason I talk about them so much is I think they are a very persistent, very dedicated and intelligent group of people. They are so a lot of them are probably more intelligent than me, but they're intelligent people who are pushing for a ridiculous politics that makes them take their politics everywhere, including comics. So when we have a firestorm on Twitter, I see that as I see the right as reactionary and the left as radical. The left makes changes. They try to actively change the world to bring about the world they want to bring. And the right says, oh no, it was better in the good old days. You know, these hippies, these millennials. And then we may argue with them a little bit. But the right is not as good as going out and making a ton of comic books or a ton of movies as the left is. The left creates these sort of passionate, artistic people. So even when they create sort of poisonous political ideas, they're still passionate and creative people. And I can still even appreciate the beauty or the brilliance of their work in spite of my disagreements with their politics. So anyone who sees my channel can tell that I talk about social justice warriors a lot, maybe to the point where I talk about them too much. But the reason I talk about them is I think they have the administrative positions. They have the positions of power. They talk about power incessantly. It's like it's the only thing that motivates them is they care about power. And for them, comics books is a place where they can go get some more power over people's lives. And so if Larry King kind of asked me, well, what can you do? You know, you can push back against them a little bit, but that's not going to change. What will that change in the long run? And it's realistic. You know, I'm probably not going to make a huge dent in the long run. I'm not going to single-handedly overthrow social justice warriorism. But when I hear them talk about the kind of world that they want to make, and when I hear them talk about the kind of stories they want to tell, I'm worried about it enough, and I love comic books enough that I feel like I should talk about it. If nothing else, than to let people who weren't in the, you know, I at the very least, I hope none of you guys ever pay, you know, tons of money to send your kids to an SJW art school. Don't do it. They're going to come home dripping period blood off the walls to make a picture of Donald Trump, and it'll only have cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And and the thing is, you don't even have to imagine it. These people will tell you what they want to do, and what they want to do is kind of freaky. And so I guess that's the short answer. Is I talk about SJWs so much because I worry that they won't leave us alone. So I mentioned before I came from this deep red state background, right? And there would be Christians who would say, oh, well, you know, South Park is bad. We must stop people from watching South Park. And as I've grown, I'm still a Christian. I'm still on the right, but I don't like this attitude of saying you must be stopped from enjoying it if I find it distasteful. But yeah, the religious right doesn't have that kind of power over culture anymore. The SJWs have that power over culture. So even if it's possible for the religious right to be as prudish and censorious as the left are the ones who are teaching all the artists who are going into the comic book industry and all the writers going into the comic book industry.
And
that's the imbalance. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. It really, you know, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. They're really influencing all sorts of media, and it is strange too, because just in my lifetime I've seen it flip from the religious right probably having a little too much power and, you know, kind of being a little oppressive, to it being flipped the other way to being like, okay, we do need some semblance of morality still, like, and that's why I'm drawn to characters like Superman and, you know, stories, you know, like classic stories where they were just about doing good things and standing up for the little guy and stuff. And it seemed like that used to be what our culture was really about not too long ago, and it's just gotten so divisive and just, you know, immoral and like corrupt. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting older, but that's kind of how it seems to me.
No, that's how I see it as well, because a lot of people are corrupt, and you got to think a lot of these people, you look at shows like, and it's kind of going back a little bit, Lost, the TV show Lost, and there's a lot of other things where, you know, you say the Spielberg stuff like with E.T. and other things, like where the family dynamic has just been destroyed. You don't have a mother and father anymore. You have like a single mother, or rotating, you know, step husband, you know, got stepfathers, stepmothers, that kind of thing, or rotating uncles, and the family structure has been destroyed. So there's a lot of people very cynical, so they don't have a, you know, there's that, you look at the newest Star Trek, you know, because in the common, in the common, you know, the main universe, whatever, the prime timeline, you know, Kirk had a mother, had a father, you know, had a, you know, straight up backstory and everything, you know, it was this colony, and then there was a food problem, all this and that. And the new one, they had to give them, you know, daddy issues. It's mostly daddy issues with these new things, and there's a lot of people, you know, whether it's these, you know, a lot of people that they didn't have strong father figures, they didn't have fathers in their lives at all, or they, you know, their fathers are just trying to tell them, hey, you know, like, give them some common sense, and like, oh no, I won't have it because I went to art school or went to whatever school and was told otherwise, and, you know, that person knows what they're talking about because, you know, like, able to get inside their head. It's like boot camp, except for, you know, it's a lot longer and costs a hell of a lot more, and you can go into debt, and sometimes you do come out with your head shaved like a cult.
We talked about politics. We talked about
Hypocracy and Twitter back and forth. And I think Conway illustrates illustrates an aspect of that. Now, Larry, you know, you kind of talked about, you know, having a laugh at all of this. It's sort of interesting. On the one hand, you kind of talk about how you hate it that, you know, Jawbreakers succeeded because the drama. I've got to be honest, the drama did help to promote the idea of Jawbreakers. It helped more people become aware of it. Yet you also enjoy watching just, you know, the bleep show of it all. You know, there's an entertainment factor to watching people get salty and upset at each other. So there's kind of this division where it's sort of fun for us to yell at each other at Twitter, but we also kind of recognize that that's not of long-term value. You were talking about the next great creator breaking new ground or striking it out on their own and making something. Boy, I want to see people doing that. And as fun as Twitter can be sometimes, an hour spent on Twitter is an hour not spent practicing your 2 points perspective or, you know, learning how to draw more than one anime girl face. So I would like to see people, you know, comics Twitter getting to the point where we see more creative people working their way towards the point where they can make books, and not just make any old books, but make excellent books. And when you talk about nostalgia, you can't just go back to the way it was in 1990. We live in a different time. You know, we're different people. We can go back and read great old books from the decades past if we want to read the best stuff from that time period. But the people working today, they need to have enough breathing room to make their work and find a place to publish it. And I'm kind of at the point where, you know, one of the big aspects of the Antarctic Press thing is wondering, gee, how will this come back to bite me? You know, if someone finds out who I am and I'm trying to publish a book, will it be enough that you just followed DNC for you to have a target on your back? Will you have had to have said something mildly upsetting yourself for them to put a target on your back? How far are people willing to take guilt by association? And I'm worried that anyone in the community who is even like, maybe Larry King, you know, so you don't like DNC that much, you don't follow him. But if you haven't been vociferous enough in calling him a Nazi, maybe you're a secret sympathizer with him. I don't know.
I'm not going to say I'm not. The thing about this, the Hugo Boss uniforms, they look pretty great. I can't lie. Don't be horrified. I'm not joking. I mean it, but I'm just saying in a joking manner. The swastika, that's a little too far. But Hugo Boss can't go wrong there. But right. Yeah, exactly. Calling him out, you know, you get killed by association. But we've seen, and I think, you know, another thing about being an adult, being just a grown person in general, is I hate the whole let's agree to disagree. No, like me and you are going to we're going to disagree, Marmaduke. But we can disagree on like a ton of stuff. But I've gone off on some tirade and stuff and had had TC start like muting me or stuff like that. But it's because that's the thing about being an adult. You don't always have to agree with somebody. Somebody can have an opinion. You may not like it, but you can move on. It's not the end of the world. I can't tolerate right now. You know, it's hard to, but there's a lot of people in Richard's camp. You know, a lot of people that you kind of like guilt by association. But there's a lot of people that are truly guilty. It's like how you like, well, he was just messing around. Oh, he was like, really? You're gonna go that far? It's like, all right. Yeah. So you've talked about how you dislike the aspect of Twitter drama, promoting a book, and maybe. Promoting himself. I meant promoting himself because it's and then he would like, oh, this video got demonetized. I'm like, understand, money. That's comics don't mean nothing. Like comics, that's secondary money. That's we started with Conway, kind of the idea of, well, what if Conway's just being a little disagreeable and pushing back a bit? So where does sort of cheerful disagreeability, where do you stop being just kind of like a guy who pushes back a little bit, and where do you start being a jerk where that goes too far, though? Who gets to be the moral authority to say, oh, sorry, you crossed the politeness meter there, and too bad. Well, if intentionally, I'd say intentionally going after someone, like the Tim Seeley situation, that's a perfect example right there.
With DNC.
Yeah, with Richard calling him out. But if Jerry Conway were to say, never a Marmaduke fan, like this kind of thing, or, like, let's say a couple days ago, I think it'll happen now, but a couple days ago or something, it's like, calls you out on something, it's like, what do you, why don't you quit YouTube, you're not good at it, you stink, or something along those lines, whatever. Just did that out of the blue, like, whoa, you're a professional, you're supposed to act like it. It's like, that kind of, a lot of people be like that. It's like, and then he'd be getting in with it, getting into it with them and everything. And that's what the reason Patch, he went off. He's like, screw it. I hate him. He's like, he went from, hey, let's unblock people, let's be nice. And he's like, screw it all, burn it to the ground. Block everyone.
I thought he was more, he was a pro, but I thought he was more kind of in the Comicsgate community, maybe on the borderline. But now he's,
Oh, no, he's a lefty. He's a card-carrying lefty. He said that openly. And the only reason, people try to, people that weren't blocked, like, hey, I know this person, they just happen to follow the guy. It's like happening to follow, President Trump. And in doing so, it's like you label, so everybody that follows him is evil. It's like maybe they want to know what the guy's doing, that kind of thing. And he's like, okay, he reevaluated things. And he's
always seemed more moderate, like Patch Zurcher was kind of one of the pros we could all still talk to, and is it just really in the last day or so he's kind of...
He was making signals that he wants kind of more politeness and friendliness in the industry, right? And yeah, so the asking people to unblock other people, that was a moment of Pat trying to say, let's get along. And then as things got personal, then Pat went back to being feisty and blocking me. And what I asked him, I think he was mad at a fan. I said, the guy asked you a question, and then I got blocked. And all right, I'll be honest, I probably said one more thing to Pat. I probably said what I say to him. I probably like wrote a quote where I said, oh no, customers are asking me questions. And I knew I was being a smart aleck, and I was probably going to get blocked, and that's what happened. So, all right, so King, you've touched on something really important, and that's hypocrisy. So I don't want to give DNC a break just because I like his channel or just because he got me back into comics. And I don't want to hold a grudge against Mark Waid and Mags Visaggio forever just because they went after, my boy DNC. I want to be straight with people who are on my side of the political fence or not on my side of the political fence. And so that might be where kind of like the trust issue comes in. If someone comes after me, is it because they are angry and they've, I've said something mean to them and now they're just swapping the shit with me. So, I can't get upset if I, gave them grief and then they give me a little grief back. I guess what I want to say is, I want to see, forgiveness on comics Twitter. So if I'm willing to forgive DNC being a jerk from time to time, I love him, but he is that. He is a jerk on the internet sometimes. I also want to be able to forgive Mags Visaggio. If Mags Visaggio starts making great books, and I'll check him out. If Mark Waid, I have no problem checking out Mark Waid's old great stuff that people dig. I'm not going to boycott everything Mark Waid's ever done, but I have a trust issue with people like Mark Waid, at least in terms of talking about politics or something. I'm probably never going to talk to Mark Waid about politics or Mags Visaggio about politics, but at least DNC will kind of chat with you about it. And I see him as a flawed person where lightning struck. The situation was right where he could be in a position to say something and have a lot more people listen to him. I see him as a flawed person who became part of a good thing. And to his credit, I think when people tell him you shouldn't be doing this, generally over the course of his channel, I have seen him make efforts to amend that. And I can't just let him off the hook and say you were not a jerk just because you're my friend. But I also have had moments in my life where I've flown off the handle on someone on Facebook, and then I'll feel bad about it the next day. So I guess the question we have is, are people flying off the handle and later they look back and say, oh, I shouldn't have flown off the handle, or are people manipulating people? So as you've talked about DNC, you kind of talked about it as if DNC is pulling strings, right? There's maybe a willful manipulation aspect to the Twitter drama to promote himself. I've sensed that in how you've talked about it. Is there maybe kind of a willful manipulation on the part of comics pros to ostracize people with the wrong political views or with problematic aspects to either their comic work or their online behavior? It's almost the Donald Trump debate, issue for issue, right? So what people would say, oh, Donald Trump is so immoral, but he upset the SJW. So what are you going to do? Is being anti-SJW enough to vote for the man for president? And I used to tell this joke. No one worked harder to elect Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump, and no one worked harder to elect Donald Trump than every SJW on the internet. They got on there and were nasty to people all day, and that made the people who weren't Donald Trump fans say, okay, to get some SJW tears, I might vote Donald Trump. DNC has that vibe to him, where he's got a combative personality. He will say jerky things, but he's also saying jerky things to people who I've never seen him go after. Actually, no. Okay, I'm gonna roast my boy DNC a bit. He went after Dennis Hopeless once, and it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that raw or anything. He pretty much just kind of joked that Dennis Hopeless was a little too milquetoast and a little too lovey-dovey and friendly on his Twitter. And I roasted DNC and said, you keep talking about comics not being polite. Now here's someone who's ridiculously polite and has encouraged me to go get Jean Grey because of that. And now you're roasting him for being too polite. But the general thrust of who he makes fun of are people who are kind of jerks, right? So the aspect of him making fun of Mags Visaggio is that Mags Visaggio makes really lame comics that it's fun to point and laugh at. I don't know, it's rough because you don't want to be a hypocrite, but then the people who come after you, they sort of instill this herd mentality in you. Oh, you're against me? Well, then I better go join up with these people who are not against me. And it can be dangerous, but sometimes it can also be necessary. If your career is on the line, if a lefty comics pro group says, we don't want you around, where are you going to go? If another group of people, even if they're salty or, if they're hypocritical on Twitter, if they're willing to give you the time of day, then you'll almost kind of naturally end up there. And I worry about that because what was once a hobby, you know, a very universal, you know, left to right, you could read and have fun with superhero stories, has become a culture war. We've thrown that term around. I think it's a fair term to describe what's going on comics Twitter. We're yelling at each other. We're having real arguments. Some of these arguments are important to have, and you can't just pretend. Like you can't tell a story about a superhero being a hero without saying what is right, what is a good thing for a hero to do, and that assumes that morality exists, that there's such a thing as doing the right thing. And so I think that the SJW left that I'm worried about, they see comics as a vehicle for I don't know, deconstructing morality, whatever it is, and DNC maybe unfortunately has become sort of the one guy you can point to and say, okay, this is the example of what happens when push comes to shove. And that's made people rally to him who may have more of a political interest than just a neutral interest in comic books. Like they might just they might just be buying the books that DNC tells them to buy because they enjoy DNC's content, not because they have any particular interest in comic books or quality in comic books. And I'm kind of in between those two extremes, I think, because I tell people don't just go after Anarchic Press just because they and DNC had a salty interaction. We still want to support good books that come out of Anarchic Press, don't we? King, so you're talking about what is the purpose of what we're trying to what are we trying to accomplish by doing such and such about comics on YouTube or Twitter? And I checked out your channel because I kind of knew of you on Twitter, but I hadn't. There's so many people you can't in depth look at everything, right? So I look at your work and I was really struck. You've got these 1-minute reviews of comics, and as I thought about it, I thought that's like not what you're supposed to do as a YouTuber. You're supposed to shoot for this like sweet 15-minute spot so you can make the YouTube bucks. But you're making that's just a really good idea. 1 minute, you tell me what a good comic is and why it's good, and I hear
Those
you.
Are my favorite.
Yeah, it is a much more effective type of video for convincing me to go get a book. So you have both talked about the Alterna model as a potential future, the European model as a potential future. I would ideally like to see a mix of both, where maybe I can get a really cheap book to see what's going on, but then I can get a really nice book later and plonk down extra if I really dig it. So Twitter and YouTube and all of the politics on Twitter and YouTube, I see that as the key for comics having any future, because YouTube sort of become the hobby of everyone and their little kid. The little kids are all watching these Let's Players, and I don't really get this. I'm an old fart already. I don't get the style of humor of these weirdo Let's Players, but YouTube has become their entertainment model. And so then they hear of, YouTube drama and political drama and video game drama and then comics day drama, and that's probably going to be the vehicle for, where it's not just, a few new people who came in with DNC. We're going to see wave after wave of young people as they're growing up coming into comics through YouTube and Twitter. And so the kind of content I see Larry King making, what I like is I will find people who will do something that's just completely different. So I'd seen tons of people doing videos on comic books I'd never seen someone do a 1-minute video that's here's why this is a good comic. And I think about that a lot, because what I want my channel to be is not a comics Twitter drama channel. I really want to convince people that this is a good comic book I read. Here's why it's good. Here's why you should go and buy it. So seeing the variety of approaches people have to making content gives you info on what you can then go do. So I might just totally rip off Larry King's model and do these just 1-minute reviews of comics saying, go get this comic. Come on. And
I'm not going to lie. I thought of stealing that idea, too. It's my favorite idea of Larry's.
Do it. I'm not kidding, because here's the thing. I look at it this way. There's something. The reason I do them like that, and I had somebody say, I forgot which video it was. Someone's comment, and I got more than one like this as well. It's like, you're basically just saying, hey, this is a good comic, and that's the end. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like there's people who do those parody channels, like, yeah, this comic. It's like kind of pulling the Plinkett thing from Red Letter Media. You'll maybe get this, Marmaduke, but it's like, it's the most disappointing comic since my son. That kind of thing. You could do a review like that. It's like,
yeah.
I'd keep this comic in the basement with all the other skeletons. That kind of, whatever. You could joke around about that. Actually, that would be like a Mr. Plinkett of comic books. I couldn't do that because I'd have to, I'd have to get, instead of Totinos, I'd have to get something else like,
there are
combos. There you go, combos instead of Totinos.
There are Mr. Plinkett parodies and parody channels.
DICK guy, yeah, that him. He's kind of like that.
There's a few. There's like fake Plinkett and stuff, and they mimic him pretty well.
Well, it's though the reason I do the 1-minute thing is because when I've seen comics and movies or in backgrounds or stuff like that. Like I was watching a video. This guy was doing a review of Bride Reanimator or one of those things, and I just have a lot of stuff I have on the background, and on the corner of my eye behind him, I see he has a couple of Judge Dredd books and a couple other books as well. And I stopped the video, turned my head to read what he has on the shelf, because it's like that's always intriguing, like what somebody has on the shelf, what books they read. It's kind of, I guess it tells me about them. It tells me it's like. One of the problems, like, you're a you fake geek girl, you're quizzing. Like, the reason I quiz because I would like to know if we have something in common. it's not like you're gonna prove to me what's the password, what comics have you read. Look, I'd like to know. It's like, okay, I read some Judge Dredd, I read Walking Dead, I read, you know, like say American Flag by Howard Chaykin. I'm like, holy sh! Yeah, I love that book. That's like one of my favorite books of all time. Talk about.
Yeah, well, it may have been more than that. I mean, some of it was we agreed on some principles. We mostly just disagreed on, you know, this or that YouTuber, right? But a takeaway I've had from the Antarctic Press fallout is I want more than just DNC to succeed. So you guys probably haven't had the chance to watch this, but I did a live stream the day that DNC announced Splato Comics, and what I said is
nodes.
Yep, creating critical nodes and infrastructure is what I call it.
Yeah, you were holding the paper and you had YouTubers and stuff.
Yes.
YouTubers, artists, and writers. I did actually watch that, but go ahead.
So the point of it was I want DNC to be the first success. So I want him to succeed, and then I want Rag Zombie to succeed, and I want Post Stump to succeed, and I want Mr. Marvel to succeed.
And then Han's like, yeah, whatever, you're full of crap, you know, it's all luck, you know, it's, you know, that kind of stuff. But
the story is raw. You're just quoting the stuff from memory, and you're even like characterizing it. Right, yeah. And it's a raw story, so it's bigger than a franchise. George Lucas probably didn't know he was making the Star Wars franchise when he told that story, because he told a freaking story. And maybe I'm trying to like wrap things up with a nice bow, but we've talked about creative people and individual drive, and you need that. There's no substitute for that. You can't copy paste the Star Wars formula and get a Star Wars story. You've got to have passion, and you've got to love the characters, and you've got to love inhabiting that world, and you've got to love the rush of it, and you've got to bring that into fruition. And I kind of see the role of YouTube and comics Twitter as this is our opportunity to tell each other about this stuff and say, hey, this person, maybe they're not at like Star Wars level yet, but they've got this passion, and I want to see them bring that to fruition. Check this out. So that's really what I'm hoping for comics people on YouTube and Twitter going forward, is this attitude that we are looking for what's good and what's raw and what's beautiful in art and stories, and we're helping each other find that stuff.
That's that kind of Christopher Reeve Superman, like really, you know, he's flying around the world just trying to get people to have food. Like, you know, that's sweet, you know, peace on earth. I like the real kind of just goody two shoes stuff sometimes.
I could dig that.
It doesn't have to all be punching Brainiac.
Yeah,
we need a dimension of that in stories that are this genre, the superhero genre. Comics as a medium, superheroes as a genre. It came from a different age, and it came from a very simple age. And you know, as fun as The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen is, I think you need to have some of that hope and optimism and youthfulness for these superhero characters. I mean, I look at a lot of them the way I might look at a Bugs Bunny, right? I love Bugs Bunny because he's funny. I love Batman because he'd go on adventures and punch the Joker. And kind of deconstructionist or mature stories, they have a place for when you love the character and the character's developed all this history to them. But at their heart, they're still very simple. They're very simple ideas for characters. A guy who dresses up as a bat and fights bad guys. A guy who has a red cape and flies around saving people. They've gained complexity over time, but at their heart, it is the kind of thing that almost a child would think of, and I think that's that's what gives them a lot of the resonance.
Love what you love. Don't it's guilty pleasure. No, just love it. If you love it for whatever reason, you love it, and talk about it. Support the people you love. Yes, you might want to hate buy or hate whatever this thing, like you get enjoyment out of it, but realize that doesn't have to be all there is. Some people, it seems like they don't realize that, but in the end, just do it. Whether it be a creator, whether it be a reader, whether it be content creator, YouTube, writer, artist, get it out there. Let's talk more action.
Yes, I think focusing on what is good in comics and focusing on people's creativity, that's going to have impact 20 years from now. 20 years from now, I don't think I'm going to care. I'm upset, today about Mark Waid writing Facebook posts, aimed at Antarctic Press. 20 years from now, I probably won't care, but I will care about the good books from this time period. And I want the industry to reach the point where people feel like they can talk about their political views and not get blackballed from the industry if their talent's there, they have good merit. I want them to feel welcome and the industry. You know, I'm more in the camp of I want pros to be, you know, a little bit more churching it up, you know, suit and tie on the internet. But that's not my, you know, primary dog in the fight. You know, tee dog in the fight, cartoon dogs.
Right.
But I have optimism. That's what's tough. You know, do you look at the bad in the world and you say, well, I'm pessimistic of the future, or do you look at the good in the world and say, I'm optimistic about the future? I'm optimistic about creative people creating beautiful things. I think that's going to have a long-term good impact. And I'm pessimistic because what would it be? I think that human nature is such that we're always going to like to, you know, do bad stuff too, right? We can't. I kind of see SJWism as a bit of trying to pretend that people don't have something bad in their nature. I think we do have something bad in their nature, which is why you can go back 30 years and see a bunch of garbage. You can go back 100 years and see a bunch of garbage. We're still going to have a bunch of garbage that, you know, drives people nuts 20 years from now. But I do click with the idea of focusing on the good and not just harping on the bad. And I think that's a good direction for all of us to be thinking about as we talk. We shouldn't stop talking about the political issues that are intruding into comics, because I think that's a conversation that people need, that needs to be had. But it isn't the long-term conversation about what is good. And when we're talking about what it is we resonate with comics, I think we're talking about what is good, what is beautiful art, what is a powerful story. So I have clicked. I want to thank you, DNC Fans United, because, you know, you picked this was my first chance to really get to hear Larry King talk, and boy, it's just really come across, you know, just how enthusiastic he is for comics. And I come in as an artist saying I want to get into comics so that I can make good comics, and then hearing a guy like Larry King, you know, just give me. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this with a notebook and paper and get.
Well, I'll give you a list.
Good,
I wrote one word, but I'll give you a list. That's all I'll say.
Good, and then I'm gonna do videos on them, and then I'm gonna let people know. I'm such a smart aleck. I'm gonna do move the needle videos, thanking you, Larry King, for introducing me to these books.
Well, you dirty son of a bitch.